I like the shirt, Rishi.
Okay, welcome everybody to our final session of the day. So today we're going to talk little bit about some of the innovations that are happening here in Arkansas, some of the student projects that have been going on here in Arkansas. I'm Dr. Zach Stillman. I teach the second and third blockchain course in our curriculum here at the university. Some of you have been my students. Some of you have been mentor, or I've been your mentor at some of the hackathon things. Some of you are founders in the area. So I'm excited to introduce everyone to all of you as well as we kind of go through this. So what I plan to do is I've sent each of you kind of a list of order for things. If you'll take 4 to 5 minutes to kind of introduce yourself, kind of what your project is or your company is that you've worked on in the past in the space, and then I've got a couple of questions to kind of ask each of you. And then we'll open it up for audience questions. I know the students have a lot of questions for each of you. I have a bunch of students competing in the hackathon in the spring, so I know they have some questions about that. But also a bunch of students looking for potential blockchain positions, so they're interested in how you got into those positions as well. So we'll start off. I'll just kind of briefly kind of let everybody know who we have, and then I'll hand it off to each of you. So we have Rishi Mattel with the Mycelium Networks, Jacob Johnson with Foundation Devices. We've got Ryan Decker and Lo Saunders, which were our grand prize winners from the hackathon last year. So they're going to talk about their project Innocuous. And then we have John Keepner, which has done an NFT analytics project over the last year. It's very interesting, in-depth stuff with NBA Top Shots as he's transitioning into some other roles as well. So, Rishi, let me hand it over to you, and I'll let you share your screen as needed.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you. I'm Rishi. Thank you for having me. And also just want to take a second to thank everybody for putting on this conference, everybody who's worked so hard. Some of the speakers have been incredible, and it's really been great information. So thanks to everybody who's been working hard for that. It's really a gem that we have here for our community. I was first introduced to blockchain by accidentally stumbling upon Bitcoin in 2011. And it's actually a pretty crazy story, but probably one that's best for another day. But I did get to benefit from the unique perspective of watching that world back then evolve into the world that we have now. Back in 2011, we had one blockchain, that was Bitcoin. And we really didn't even know if the world could sustain additional blockchains or if we even needed them. And if you fast forward to 10 years now, we see hundreds of thousands of blockchains out there alive in the real world. So it really has been an incredible experience to watch that. Last year, we founded Mycelium Networks, and Mycelium is a blockchain company. And our mission is pretty simple. It's to accelerate the world's adoption of decentralized networks. And one of our first projects, and something that we're really, really proud of, is bringing the Helium Network to Northwest Arkansas. So if you're not familiar with the Helium Network, I would encourage you to dig in, look it up, take a look. It's pretty cool. But briefly, Helium is a decentralized open network protocol that aims to completely redefine the way that the world's information travels around the globe. And we're doing this by completely reconstructing and re-architecting the way that communication protocols are designed and built, to be built in a truly decentralized fashion and to be built on blockchain. One of the first networks that we're bringing to Northwest Arkansas is an IoT-based network. And IoT stands for Internet of Things. And it's largely defined as a large number of sensor-driven devices that are low cost and low powered, but can transfer reliable information over long distances. And, understanding supply chain, logistics, hearing some of the speakers speak earlier today, as well as knowing that this is a big part of our identity and our area's business ecosystem. We have a lot of exciting things planned for that. In addition to deploying the physical network, we're also supporting the Helium blockchain in a number of ways, including providing over 1% of the total compute power needed to support the Helium blockchain on a global level from right here in Northwest Arkansas. We're also really excited to have announced our $1 million pledge to be paid out in the form of free data to anybody in Northwest Arkansas that wants to build their dreams, their business, their imagination, their project, whatever, on top of this exciting new network. And that's really the part that's super interesting and super exciting for me, because that's really when the community makes this what they want it to be. But we're not just focused on helium. We're a blockchain company. So we will continue to deploy, maintain, and support all kinds of new projects and blockchains in the coming months and years. We really do believe that Northwest Arkansas is ready for this and deserves this future. Really just kind of take a look around. This conference, the minds, the talent, the energy, the resources, it's all here. And we really do believe that we have everything we need right here in Northwest Arkansas to make this place a global hub for blockchain development and innovation, much like Web 2.0 did for Silicon Valley. So thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I can't wait to hear from the other panelists.
Oh, thank you. This is definitely an exciting project, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you further on the project for some things, especially with our hackathon coming up in the spring. It may be a great opportunity to see what our students could do with the Helium Network and through some of those things as well. Up next, we have Jacob Johnson with Foundation Devices. So I'll hand it over to you as well.
Hey, everybody. I'm going to share my screen, hopefully. Can everybody see? Cool. So yeah, my name is Jacob Johnson. I'm a co-founder and the head of supply chain at Foundation. This is kind of our mission statement. So we really just strive to empower humankind by making Bitcoin and decentralized technologies more accessible to everyone. And so this is kind of a landscape of what the current hardware wallets in the market do. And key storage for hardware wallets is kind of really an unsolved problem. The current wallets are today pretty difficult to use and poorly designed. So they kind of remind us of the old MP3 players before the iPod came out. And so what we're trying to do is really empower users to store their keys, whether that be for Bitcoin or crypto or other types of keys like HSM keys. And to really do that and have high security, the keys should really be stored offline on these devices. So we took the hardware wallet market and kind of gave it its iPod moment by making Passport. So this is, I'll tell you a little bit about the device. So Passport is really fast. It has probably the best user experience of any of the hardware wallet on the market. It signs transactions using QR codes through like a mobile-centric platform. It has a camera on the back of the device. And rather than having like a closed walled garden ecosystem, our key signing platform is compatible with popular wallets like Blue Wallet that you can download on your phone, or custody services like Casa and soon-to-be exchanges like River. So it's more secure than existing offerings because we use trustable components, and we have an open source security model that has been vetted by security researchers all over the world. And our device has a true air gap, which means that there are no internet connections to the device. There's no Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, and there's not even a charging port because it runs off of AAA batteries. You can easily verify addresses with the device through the QR codes, and you can also verify that the device is real and produced by Foundation through tamper checks and by reproducing the software through reproducible builds. And then also we are the only hardware wallet that is made and manufactured in the USA. So I'll talk a little bit about open source hardware and why it's important. So security via openness and transparency is a lot easier than opaqueness, like in having proprietary IP, because security researchers, like I mentioned earlier, can easily review the designs and report vulnerabilities directly to us, and advanced users can verify the hardware and software themselves. And then also building on each other's work to innovate faster and progress society is a lot better than the closed walled garden ecosystems and the siloing that, these other like corporate hardware companies do. Because if you're a new hardware company trying to enter the market, you either have to completely start from scratch, or you have to buy like some form of proprietary IP from like a small handful of companies like Qualcomm or ARM. So what we've done is fully open source all of our circuit designs through a license called the CERN OHL Open Hardware License. And then also our firmware is open source through GPL. So these are what they call viral copyleft licenses, which ensure that like anyone can use our work for pretty much any purpose, as long as they also open source their work as well. And so we've been pretty successful at doing this. We've been on a bunch of podcasts, been making pretty good waves in social media, and if you want to check out some of those media appearances, they're all listed on our website, I believe. And then this is the team. So obviously couldn't do it without any of these guys. The top 4 of the co-founders and the bottom 8 are people that we've recently hired. So we're really growing the team and looking to grow the team even more in the future. And on that note, we just raised a $2.5 million seed round that was led by a venture capital firm called Bolt VC. And we're almost sold out of the Passport Founders Edition. So if you want one, make sure to check out the website and go grab one. We did only make a certain number of the Founders Editions, so there won't be any more of those devices that are sold after they're sold out. And then we're also going to be launching a companion app soon, so make sure to be on the lookout for that. And then I also just wanted to kind of include like some cool pictures. This is what they call a panelization of the boards, which is basically the printed circuit boards before they get cut and have all the components placed onto them. So the left is our camera board, and the right is the main circuit board. And then also this is like a real life picture of the camera board and just how small it is. So you can kind of get an idea of how intricate the manufacturing process can get. But yeah, I'm really excited to be here as well. Thank you for the opportunity, and looking forward to connecting with everyone afterwards.
Thank you, Jacob. Definitely an exciting project. To know that it's the only one designed and produced here in the United States is interesting. As I mentioned previously, I've got a lot of wallets. I've got a bunch that I've picked up at conferences or at different events. I don't know how much I fully trust them, right? It's, how much do I really trust those? How much do you really trust an iPhone charger, right? There's problems with those as well. So to hear that there's not even a charge port on the device is quite interesting to solve some of those problems. Okay, up next, we've got Ryan Decker and Lo Saunders. Both of them are graduated now, I believe, or will be graduated now. We're winners of the hackathon in the spring for a project called Innocuous. So I'm going to let them both introduce themselves kind of briefly and talk a little bit about what their project was this spring.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Steelman. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
Great. So thank you everyone for being here. I'm Ryan Decker.
And I'm Lo Saunders.
And like Dr. Steelman said, we're both recent graduates from the Walton College here at the University of Arkansas. And we were winners of the 2021 Razor Block Hackathon. So in this hackathon, we addressed the use case presented by American University and the University of Arkansas to develop a distributed health passport. And from that, we have developed Innocuous.
Now, for us as business students, taking on a healthcare use case really challenged us to get close to the problem and motivated us to understand what value consumers wanted to derive from a distributed health passport. We met with healthcare industry professionals and consumers to address their needs and add value. Having understood what pain points those consumers were facing, we centered our project Innocuous around 3 initiatives. Innocuous provides a single source of truth for a user's health record, allows users to securely verify and share these records, and gives these records context to address individual level needs. Harnessing emerging technologies in one application allows us to achieve those initiatives. Distributed storage and blockchain technologies complement each other, enabling compliant data storage, secure verification, and analytics of individual level risk through machine learning.
So with Innoculus, users own and manage their own health data in a decentralized storage pod. For example, Inrupt Solid Pod. And Innoculus allows healthcare providers to actually add health records directly to a user's pod. And then whenever this is added, it's hashed using blockchain technology that can be used for verification. So this approach leverages the benefits of blockchain while still complying with data privacy regulations and providing a single source of truth of a patient's records. This enables then seamless verification further along in the process without the need to present additional ID. So COVID-19 really highlighted the current opacity of the risk landscape around one's health. So we've all been more mindful of this in the last couple of years. And last year, we watched as many students returned home during holidays without knowing the risks of COVID and how that could impact themselves as well as those at home when they return home. So tracking your health risk is in many ways kind of like tracking the weather. So seeing clouds outside your window doesn't really tell you much until you look at the forecast or you check the radar to see if rain is coming. So Innoculus models and communicates individual level risks so that people can make more informed decisions about their health, much like checking the weather forecast. So this model considers risks from various perspectives, such as from the environment. Think of population density, think of intervention in the community, or demographic information of the community as a whole. And then also considers personal health risks. So this would be pre-existing conditions, perhaps vaccination status or any other health information. And finally, the behavior of the individual. So this could increase risk if the individual would attend large social gatherings, but also this risk could be decreased by socially distancing, wearing a mask, or proper hygiene. So Innoculus builds upon these insights and the risks from the community and provides mitigation strategies to the individual. So currently, individuals are able to change their behavior to mitigate the risk to themselves and others. And so now a student could take the necessary steps to safely reunite with their family as they go home because they have the mitigation strategies provided by Innoculus. So all of these features that we've mentioned are housed in a comprehensive, easy to use application on a user's mobile device, which prevents the need for multiple storage or verification apps. So creating this prototype in the hackathon this spring helped to bring the idea to life and show how these different technologies all work together in one application.
Since the hackathon, Ryan and I have attended the HIMSS conference where blockchain was center stage. As other speakers had mentioned earlier in this conference, blockchain is no longer just a buzzword, and the conversation has progressed to highlight both the benefits and the drawbacks of blockchain solutions in healthcare. We are continuing to develop Innoculus through the I-Core STEP program here at the University of Arkansas, which is funded by the National Science Foundation. Our plans are to continue growing, pivoting, and innovating to make Innoculus a reality and to provide individuals with the full story of their health. Hackathons are sprints, very caffeinated and sleepless sprints, but you're able to learn a lot in a very short period of time. And you're also able to develop develop solutions for complex problems and turn them into beneficial solutions for your community. Ryan and I had a great time at the hackathon, and I'm not just saying that because we won. I've lost hackathons. It's a great opportunity to learn about the technology, whether you're a student, a corporate professional, or just interested in the technology. So 100% would recommend for anyone to participate in a hackathon. Thanks.
Thank you both. And again, congratulations on winning in the spring and seeing it kind of continue on. I know that initially there was some interest possibly from VCs shortly after kind of presenting the project. And so it's nice to see also access to the I-Corps program here at the university. We want to see our students develop stuff. We want to see those things go further on. And so it's glad to see that you're still continuing on with it, especially with all the other passports being in use right now, right? In New York and in other states. We're starting to see what are the things that work, what are the things that don't work in those scenarios. So, okay. Next up, we have John Keepner, which is a prior student of mine, also one of the winners at the hackathon for an NFT project, separate from what he'll talk about today. During my class in the spring, John and I connected talking about NFTs. He was very interested in NFTs. And he built out this really interesting project throughout the spring with some analytics that I'd like him to speak a little bit about. So John, I'm gonna hand it over to you. You can kind of give us an introduction background and kind of tell us a little bit about what you built.
Yeah. Well, hi, everyone. I'm John. I'm a senior here. I, like Dr. Steelman said, took his class along with a few of the classes from earlier speakers today. And I actually didn't get my start at blockchain at the University of Arkansas. I first ran into blockchain in high school early on. And it was kind of the first thing that I was professionally or academically interested in. So it was interesting to, get to grow into something that everybody kind of excels into after having their own specialization and then learning, wow, they know so much about stuff that is building into, blockchain that hadn't been around prior. So I'm going to go ahead and throw up some slides right here, my entire screen. Sure, we'll do that. And I will share. So when I got into this NFT project, I actually had stumbled upon this site, NBA Top Shots, and it was kind of the first NFT project that I felt was kind of capturing some kind of legitimacy through licensing with a, body of, in this case, it was the NBA, and they had licensed highlights through the NBA to create these digital, almost like basketball cards, but they were little videos of in-game highlight reels. So they were pretty interactive. And I'll go ahead and the next slide, I'll show you, that's kind of what it looks like. Is if you were to click on a LeBron James moment, you can see this data here, and you can see like the lowest ask, how much the top NFT is sold for, and a list of all NFTs for sale. And it was really hard to kind of figure out not just the sentimental value and what the market thought of it, what people were willing to pay at one point, but kind of advanced financial analytics on an investment. So if you're viewing the NFT as some form of investment, there was no good way to kind of siphon through all of the data that the website hosted and get some form of synopsis on what was a good buy, good sell. And also you couldn't get alerts on, new things being minted to the blockchain. So I went ahead and set out to come up with some form of platform that you could do different things like set price alerts for when an NFT hit a certain price, and actually see when the company was minting new NFTs on the blockchain to put into sale at a later date, and like historical data. So what has happened to a certain card over time was something that I found really interesting, because then you could find out kind of how liquid a card is, how often it'll sell, and things like that. And so I decided that I wanted to do it through creating a historical database via web scrape. And I wanted to scrape directly from the blockchain, so it was extremely fast, and I could get different market updates before they actually went to the site itself. And I did that through looking at their proprietary blockchain, which is Flowchain, and their proprietary language is Cadence. And so all of this jargon doesn't really matter that much, except if you look at it, there was a big issue when I was scraping the data off the blockchain particularly, and it's that the actual moment data did not exist on the blockchain. And this is pretty often when a new blockchain comes into fruition. There's speed issues, or there's issues with programming that later developers decide that this isn't the best way to do it. Let's do it a different way later. And what I had to end up doing was taking the moment's ID, which is just the hash value of the token, and scrape the blockchain for that, scrape the blockchain for all of the metadata, for the wallet, things like that, and pair it off of a database of a centralized scrape of the website's data. So if you buy an NFT, depending on the platform, OpenSea and things like that are a little different. You're not necessarily buying the picture in the token. Often the token on the blockchain just holds metadata that's connected to some centralized database. If you were around in blockchain in 2017 or earlier, DeFi wasn't that big yet because all exchanges kind of needed to be centralized for speed and allocation of the asset that you're trying to buy in a timely manner. It was all a user experience thing. Same thing with Top Shot. Right now, you're not buying the little video in the NFT. You own metadata that connects to their centralized database. And so I came up with a way to actually create a paired database that took blockchain data that moved extremely fast. It was always updating in fractions of a second, and then doing an hourly pool of all of the kind of larger sets of data and like player names, images from the site itself. And by doing that, I could have a historical list of referential data from the website itself, and I could have a fast acting kind of cryptographic data set that I could pair to do quick things like if a transaction was thrown on the blockchain at this hash address, I could cross-reference my paired database, which was a little bit slower, and quickly get a user an update. And so this is just kind of a quick example of what that would look like. You can see this is just a load of one small subset of data that I would pull from the paired database. You can see like the seller ID as a transaction hash, whereas everything else is more information about the token itself and like the price at which it's sold. And I can go ahead and stop sharing and just finish out with talking, I think. Yeah, all good. But what I learned from this project is basically, one, it's easy for a person to have an idea based on an issue they have with an existing blockchain platform and come up with a really valuable solution to it. There's a few other companies that did this around the same time as I did. They had, a little bit better set of like war chest or allocated resources. There was like, one of them was 5 software engineers from Google who quit their jobs to do this. I didn't quite compete with that, taking 18 credit hours and doing this at like 10 p.m. every night. But they did big Series A's. They're really well done sites now. One of them is called evaluate.market. If you're interested, they've gone on to do this for a ton of NFT platforms. And by doing this, you can kind of be part of shaping the intrinsic value side, not just why is this JPEG selling for $350,000. It's this JPEG has performed because of these specific attributes of data and transaction history that have happened to it over time. And this one hasn't. That's why it's $4. And that's a really cool thing. It's cool to be able to take this big open source technology like blockchain and use something like the data that it provides us that centralized databases don't necessarily, and create value as a user of the platform. It's something that traditionally hasn't been as accessible. So that's a little bit about Top Shot Genius. And if you actually want to see the code or anything, you can just reach out to Dr. Steelman. The university owns it all now. And go ahead and play around with it. Tell me what you think.
Thank you, John. This has been great kind of working on that project. NFTs have exploded in the last year. So it was interesting to see them evolve in the spring, kind of took a dump there for a little bit in the summer. But now they've really launched off again, right? They're really kind of taking off with platforms like OpenSea for a lot of those. So it was interesting to see a project spin up purely out of interest of John's own, to kind of guide him a little bit through that throughout the semester while he was working on multiple other projects. So while John built this in the spring, he also did a project for the hackathon. He did a project for my class. He did another individual project for my class, and continued to refine his skills as he was kind of going through as well. So it was exciting to see that project kind of evolve over time. And for my students that are here in the session, I will share the code with you as we get to that. I don't want to scare you off a little bit yet. He did write a lot of code, so I don't want to throw it all at you at once through some of these things. But I've got a few questions that I want to ask to the panel, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience as well. But a big one that I want to ask is, as each of you entered into this blockchain space, what skill set or business knowledge do you feel like you needed to learn to be competent in the space? And what kind of skill set do you think is your most useful skill set in your current role that you have either in your company or in that project that you may have developed?
Are we going back in order?
We can just jump in, or we can go back in order. It doesn't matter. Whoever wants to answer.
Cool. I guess I can go first. So I think for how I got into the business and like what I needed to be like more competent than I was, because I did come from previously before Foundation, I came from a cryptocurrency mining company, and before that I worked at Formlabs. So I kind of did have a little bit of professional experience before I did found Foundation. But I think I really, over the last couple of years, I've learned a lot about electrical engineering that I didn't previously know. And I in my everyday work, I really do have to know a little bit about it. Obviously, I don't have to be an electrical engineer because, my main job is supply chain, but it's a lot of involvement with electrical engineering and producing, printed circuit boards and the components that go onto the circuit boards, and knowing how everything, kind of electromechanically goes together. So all of that has been really valuable. Electromechanical assembly, manufacturing, test fixturing, and things that kind of where you can make machines to basically test the machines that you're making. All of those things are really valuable. But previously, what's most important to my job specifically is the personability and being able to network and connect with people and kind of manage vendors and relationships and make sure that everyone is kind of working together towards one goal. And so that involves a lot of communication skills. It involves a lot of organizational skills and kind of the softer skill set. So I think both of those things are really valuable, having a mesh of soft skills and hard skills, technical and non-technical, that you can kind of move in and out of. That was what kind of really helped me through the journey.
Okay, and what was your academic background before you got into this space?
So I did a semester at U of A in EECS, and then I did a semester at Hendrix doing neuroscience and Mandarin Chinese. So I'm semi-fluent in Mandarin, which has also helped a ton because Chinese suppliers. But I actually took a leave of absence from Hendrix to go work at Formlabs, so I still haven't completed my degree.
Well, you've got real world experience. That's more than what most people have kind of in this space. So awesome. Anyone else?
I can go ahead. I think one of the unique situations of being students from outside of blockchain, so I was an accounting and finance major, is that whenever I came into the hackathon, it was pretty much from ground zero, right? You hear about blockchain, but there was no experience that I'd had hands-on with blockchain before that. And so it was really interesting to approach it from a, just trying to find a solution and seeing how blockchain could fit into that, rather than trying to apply blockchain to every problem that could be out there, right? So we like to say it's, blockchain-enabled solutions rather than blockchain solutions, because a lot of times there's, especially in the health industry, there's a lot of nuances that you have to consider, such as immutability of blockchains and things like that wouldn't necessarily work. So you have to find ways around that, and potentially look for technologies that complement blockchain, or other things that work together with the technology to solve the problem and create a better solution overall.
And I know, Ryan, in your project, you ended up using pods, which is not a blockchain-based technology, but then used blockchain for the verification aspect of it, which was an interesting approach to, say we're going to use all of these different technologies, right? It's not just the blockchain solving everything. It's also going to be traditional databases. It's going to be other types of data structures and other existing internet infrastructure that we need to work these into and not completely throw away. So it was interesting to see that evolution in your project.
Yeah, it was really interesting to learn how everything can interact and what all is out there, and just continue to learn throughout the process.
Awesome. Anyone else?
I can throw in, at the very least, like I said, I came into blockchain with no knowledge of anything, and I'm not just talking about blockchain. I'm talking about coding and data, uh, basic business knowledge, debits and credits and stuff like that. But one thing that it's really great to know when you are getting into blockchain is it doesn't really matter where you start or how you start, as long as you're willing to be broad to an extent. And when you find something that you're interested in, be willing to dive deep into one thing. It could be on the business side, it could be on the technological side. Blockchain is just a community of people working together to create vast solutions. And whether you're, the top of the top in blockchain or somebody that just started, nobody can create it all, other than maybe Satoshi Nakamoto and a handful of others. But it takes a community of builders who are interested in little parts of the blockchain. Like for me, it's how are we going to actually use it when it's all regulated, said and done? So that's kind of where I focus, and other people focus on other things. But just get into it and find something that semi interests you and be willing to dive deep into that, because I guarantee, regardless of your profession, you're going to find value add.
Awesome. Yeah, John, I know throughout that process, and I've done the same thing of reaching out to the actual developers of these platforms, the actual people working at companies. They've all been very helpful of responding back or jumping into a Discord and being able to interact with the people that are building the stuff on the ground floor right now, which has been really great to see whenever you're struggling for some of these things, or just to find partners. I know you were searching for programming partners and people to kind of help you solve some things, and we were able to reach out to that as well. So awesome. Okay, Rishi, did you have something?
Yeah, I just want to add something. John's spot on. No, absolutely right. Centralized networks are flawed in a lot of ways, and it's not to say that decentralized networks don't have their challenges as well. But one of the characteristics to kind of recognize that differentiates the two is the community aspect. And with centralized networks, what tends to happen over time is that the users in the community, the power and the resources that they hold tends to, over time, dissolve or evaporate into the hands of the higher rungs of that centralized network or power system. And with decentralized networks, the way that they're built and as a core function of the way that they function, they tend to retain, even though things exchange hands all the time, the power and the resources within the community. And so we're entering into a world that is largely community driven. And that's very, very important. So I just wanted to point that out. John, spot on.
Awesome. Yeah, it's the amount of people that I've been able to meet in the last 4 to 5 years, just saying, hey, I'm interested in blockchain, and being able to have a deep conversation with them about that. You can kind of see people's eyes light up when, they haven't had somebody to talk to blockchain about, and you meet somebody new in that space. The communities are always growing that are out there as it goes through. So, okay, I've got 2 more questions. The first one is for Rishi and Jacob. As both of you are in companies and you're leading those companies, what guidance or advice do you have for the audience and the students that are maybe looking to take their blockchain projects and ideas to the next level? What should be their goals, or how do you think they should go about that?
That's a great question. I think that it's really, really important to consider the community aspect. If you're a student or an entrepreneur and you're looking to get involved in blockchain or into the space, I would encourage you to go out there and find a community and get involved in the community. Blockchain projects are really powered by their communities, and they in turn empower those communities. So the best way to get involved, if you're looking for something to get involved in, is to jump right into those communities. If you have a tool or an application or a project that you're already working on, consider the same thing. We're leaving a world where the world's greatest inventions were created behind closed doors. We're entering into a world that is run by multiple blockchains and therefore community driven. So I would encourage you, if you've got something new, exciting that you're working on, don't be afraid to start working on your community. Put it out there, start building your community, and that community is going to help you build your project. You can't have a blockchain without a community.
Awesome. Great insights.
That's really well said. The previous company I was at had a pretty massive community, and a lot of the people in it actually open source contributed to the project. A lot of the people that are in these communities are actually, developers or people who work on side projects pretty frequently. So that's really good advice. I would also say, reach out to people like ourselves, people who have started, crypto companies or companies that are around, the types of things that you want to get involved in, because they can probably give you pretty good advice on things to avoid or things to focus on. So yeah, I would say pretty much the same advice, like try and get connected to people that are in the space or in the industry that you're interested in most. Try a whole bunch of different things. Maybe you might not like the thing that you try first, but don't let that discourage you, because as already mentioned, the space is pretty big. There's a lot of different types of projects out there that you can get involved in. So yeah. That's how I did it. I went to the MIT Bitcoin Expo like 3 years in a row, and that's how I got the jobs that I have today, was just networking at the MIT Bitcoin Expo. So yeah, it's a pretty incredible opportunity. Things like hackathons and expos really allow you to connect with the industry leaders and learn information from them that may not be accessible online easily or easily found. A lot of these industry knowledge experts have a lot to say, and a lot of it's really good information.
Yeah, a lot of interesting conversations over lunch, over coffee, things that happen at those conferences, that may be outside the gray area of NDAs. You kind of see the interesting things that the leaders see coming in the space as well, which is always great. Okay, this next question is for Ryan, Lo, and John. Since you guys have competed in the hackathon a few times, Ryan, I think you did it twice, 2 or 3 times in the process. What advice do y'all have for the students who are going to be competing in the 2022 hackathon in the spring that may help them create some great projects like you guys had in the spring?
I would probably say freshen up on some of your innovation skills. When I was a freshman was when I was starting to participate in blockchain events and the conversations, but I really had no idea how much freedom you have with it and how to actually engage with it. And it wasn't until I had gotten comfortable with some of the sprint methodologies, green canvas modeling, design thinking, as well as some of the customer discovery processes that incorporate or are part of innovation, that I really started to understand and feel comfortable working with blockchain. It's a very big space, and you do kind of need to establish a little bit of comfort with failing and pivoting. That's kind of one of the biggest, I think, pain points for people working with blockchain, but getting familiar with some of the innovation process would be a great way to start.
Okay, awesome. And for those of you that may not know, we have the Innovation Center down at the Harmon Parking Garage. You can take design thinking courses and labs that are there that are excellent to kind of really spur your idea of how do I get started in coming up with an idea. I think it was interesting, Lo, that when you guys were working on the project, you didn't start with the blockchain foundation of this has to be blockchain. You started with the solution and then how blockchain could solve that. And I think that really showed in your project compared to some of the others that we've had in the past years where we force fit a blockchain onto that use case. And it may not be the right solution for that use case.
Absolutely. That was lesson learned. I've failed the blockchain hackathon before, and I think that was the biggest takeaway, is not forcing blockchain onto something.
Excellent. Anyone else?
Yeah, I just kind of, Lo said it really well. And one thing that she mentioned was, the sprint, right? Understanding how to accomplish a lot in a short amount of time. And that's one thing, competing in 2 hackathons of different formats. The first one was a, probably more traditional 24 to 48 hour hackathon where, you just get as much done as you can in that initial 2-day period. And then the next one, the one this year was, a few weeks long. And so they're very different in terms of the structure, but we kind of approached them the same way, right? Just as we would in a 2-day hackathon, we hit the ground running, tried to get as much as we could done early, talk to as many people as we could, establish all of those connections at the beginning, understanding what the problem was and how to solve it so that we had more time to focus on building out the solution, building out the prototype, and building out the presentation. Because that's one thing, whenever you're presenting a blockchain solution to people of various knowledge levels with blockchain, different industries, you have to present it in a way that focuses on that solution, right? And not just the technology behind it. And so we were able to really focus in on that and spend a good chunk of our time working on the presentation part, and really communicating how this would add value or how this would solve a problem.
Excellent. Now, John, you were in a slightly different scenario in that you were in my class doing the project as the hackathon at the same time. Do you have any other advice for those students that are kind of balancing that as the class project versus an outside project like Lo and Ryan had?
Yeah, more than anything, if you're in Professor Steelman's class, he's not going to let you mess up too bad. So just trust that process. But like they all perfectly stated it, don't focus on blockchain. I've actually still never seen a team present at the hackathon and say that blockchain is not a good use case, usually because it is, but be bold if you want to. But other than that, make sure that the team that you kind of join or group together is kind of knowledgeable of everybody else's skills. I've been in hackathons where the people that weren't maybe the best coders decided to be the programmers, and the people that weren't that great at presenting, they decided to present, and you couldn't really leverage everybody else's skill set. But maybe the only other piece I should add is make sure that you kind of know who you're working with and you can leverage each other's knowledge going into it.
Excellent. Yeah, having the team composition is a big piece that I've seen people struggle with. And at the hackathon, we've tried different things. We've tried, selecting your team during that first event. During the earlier years when we did the 24 to 48 hours, we'd have a kickoff event and you find your team then. We've now seen more so with the structure of the hackathon that it ends up being class projects. And even then, you still want to find the right people in those projects. But these hackathons are also open to the public as well. So for those of you in the audience that are interested in participating, we have both a student track and an open track. We want to see our prior students come back and compete in these things. We want to see employees in the area and people interested in the area to come compete in these things as well. For those of you that have companies and you may want to see if a use case can have a solution, feel free to reach out. We're always looking for use cases for the hackathon so that our students can select interesting use cases to try to solve as we're going through. These use cases change every year, depending on what's going on. This year was a lot of healthcare related stuff due to COVID. Had some NFT stuff as well, but we don't know what it's going to look like in the spring. We don't know what 2022's killer app in the blockchain space is going to be just yet. So if you think of anything, feel free to reach out. We're always looking for things as well. Looks like we've got about 10, 15 minutes. So I'm going to open it up to the audience for any questions. If anybody wants to say something, you can jump on and turn your camera on and ask the question as well. And the panel can jump in where they can.
Yeah, I've got a quick question. I think some of the group works at Walmart. I mean, have you guys seen like real applications for blockchain within the spaces that you work?
Yeah, so one of the presentations earlier today was around Walmart Canada and DLT Labs, a solution with invoice processing, which has been really interesting. And I've dived deep into that use case because it's relevant to a lot of the work that I'm doing there as well. And it's been really impactful to see how much was done and the benefit that was created in a relatively short amount of time. And so it was one of those things that really reiterates that if you want to solve a problem and embrace emerging technologies, and you can really have a profound impact. And it was a really drastic impact in terms of the benefits that solution was able to provide to the company.
Yeah, that's have you been able to talk to anybody on our Archonda's team about how that works or their opinions on how it's run?
A little bit, and I plan to more in the future. We've had a few conversations, but look to have more.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been really interesting, like being in these classes. I'm in the graduate program right now in Dr. Steelman's class, and it's been really interesting to kind of see like how these cases, like how blockchain could be applicable in certain scenarios. I can't remember. I think it might have been Dale Christie who said it today, but blockchain, like really raises the stakes on the quality of the data that's put into the system. And I mean, I'm sure as you guys start to work through things, like, I mean, at least in the space that I've worked in, I've noticed there's just there's so many issues with data quality that really put a lot more risk, or really elevate the risk on putting them into some sort of immutable solution, or integrating with some sort of immutable solution. So I mean, there's still a long way to go with just the core tech that some of these enterprises are working off of.
Excellent. Anyone else? Or if we're waiting for another one, I have one more. Well, here's one that's popped in. Are there any blockchain related meetups in the Northwest Arkansas area? There used to be. Jacob, do you know of any recently? It's kind of one of those things that comes and goes with the crowds occasionally.
Yeah, I don't know of any specific ones. I'm sure that there's like a platform called Meetups or Meet Me or something like that, where they would schedule them, but usually it was just like, you know, like a kind of happy hour situation where everyone would just get together and chat. But yeah, I mean, if you're a traveler, Craig, there's a bunch of meetups all over the place in bigger cities. If you're ever in the Boston area, I have tons of meetups that I could share with you. I also used to live in Denver, so there's a bunch of Boulder, Denver meetups that are pretty awesome. But I would be open to, you know, starting a meetup, you know, through the Blockchain Center if you guys are down for it. Whenever we can, you know, get around all the pandemic restrictions. So yeah, I mean, once we fire that back up, I'd be more than willing to kind of help organize that.
Yeah, in the past, we've done it at our Brewer Entrepreneurship Hub down on the square. And
Yep.
for any of you that haven't been able to see that, I'd definitely recommend seeing that resource down on the square here in Fayetteville. You know, we had quite a few of them during 2017, 2018, kind of hype of the cryptocurrency cycle. And when the market crashed, everybody was like, I don't want to go to these meetups anymore for a little bit. So hopefully they'll start coming back and making some things. But there's also, for those of you that are interested, the Nwa Tech Summit is also coming up as well. There will be some blockchain discussion there. Great way to kind of interact with people that are in the tech space across the area, across different industries that are there. But what's interesting over the last year, a lot of these meetups are live streamed now, right? Because there's so much going on with the pandemic and COVID restrictions. I regularly attend developer webinars and web calls that are weekly sessions from different development groups, just to kind of hear what's going on, to kind of meet some of the people in the background. A lot of those are on, you know, YouTube. I personally just reach out on Twitter to a lot of these people, say, hey, can I get an invite? And they're all happy to kind of interact and see what's going on. So we'll see what we can do once hopefully the COVID thing kind of pans out a little bit over this semester. We'll see what it looks like in the spring, because it is nice to see everybody in the same room occasionally when we can get to do that. Last question. Are there any new use cases or technologies or applications in the blockchain space that you've kind of seen that seem really interesting to you in the next 2 to 3 years? Something that's not quite there yet, but that maybe you have an interest in for the next 2 or 3 years.
I'll go first if that's okay. I think that the next step in the cycles of it's around, people talk about it, it's not fast enough. It'll be either, you know, utility for, you know, digital ownership, whether that be through NFTs or not, owning a token to get onto a platform, things like that. But I think more than that, it'll be decentralized file storage and kind of copyright law based around digital ownership, just more fluent like regulation.
Yeah, that's an interesting area, right? The kind of copyright of these NFTs. You see a lot of people download, save the NFT, go mint another NFT on a different platform, right? There's a lot of issues with downloading it off of OpenSea, launching it on another platform. It looks the same, you give it the same name, but it's not the same, right? We don't know who is the creator of some of these, which is kind of interesting. But also the decentralized file storage. We do cover IPFS to some extent in the class, which is interesting to kind of see it grow. But John, as you mentioned, the NBA Top Shot all of their moments, all of the images related to those NFTs, they still own and retain. So if that website ever goes down, those NFTs as well are now just metadata. I know that OpenSea is allowing you to kind of launch that onto IPFS now when you mint. And so some of the platforms are allowing you to do that. So I'm curious to see how that further gets kind of integrated. I'm personally very interested in the metaverse. You may have heard Dr. Conway kind of mention that. I see the metaverse as the next kind of evolution of the NFT space to some extent, as it kind of goes through a lot of these things. But a lot of the NFT and games that are being designed are already metaverses, right? They're already virtual worlds in some of these environments. And so that connection from NFT to digital objects is very close there. And I'm ready to see what it's going to look like in the other spaces as well.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned IPFS because the previous company I worked at was Nebulous Labs, and they run the Siacoin project. So they're pretty big competitors. But yeah, distributed file storage is definitely one of the pretty exciting things, that applications, I guess, for blockchains. I would actually say that, since I'm in like the hardware world, I guess, the really exciting thing on my end is natural gas flaring that's being used for Bitcoin mining, and a couple of other pretty interesting things, like methane biodigesters and other interesting ways to get the energy that you need to actually run the Bitcoin miners without utilizing traditional commercial or residential electricity. So yeah, a lot of those things, if you want to talk about any of that, connect with me, because that's the type of stuff that I'm really interested in right now. Excellent.
Yeah, it reminds me of a project that I keep getting advertised on the Brave browser, Heatbit, which is a Bitcoin miner that is also a heater for your room. I'm curious to see how well it does. I may buy one just to see. They're not that expensive. I know my gaming computer will definitely heat up the room by itself, so it may be worthwhile. But it's always interesting to see this overlap of different kind of hardware devices that are coming out in this space, because a lot of people think of the blockchain space as the software space and just the smart contracts. But there's so much more to that, especially when we move into IoT devices and mesh networks, that we need these other components and we need them to be verified components.
Yeah, in my opinion, the actual value that is derived from blockchains like Bitcoin is through the proof of work, right? Like that's what's backing the actual value of the store of value, rather. So I think it's important to have that aspect to kind of like back the currency or the asset. Same thing with helium, right? It's like proof of coverage, right? Is what they call it. Yeah.
Excellent. Anyone else? Anything interesting that you may have seen?
Yeah, I was going to maybe add, in the healthcare industry, what we kind of got exposed to was really the conversation, and this isn't just limited to blockchain, about equity and accessibility and the affordability of healthcare. And anytime you have an opportunity with healthcare to provide an innovative solution, that is absolutely something that needs to be in the forefront of what you're working on. And so a lot of the conversation at the healthcare conference that we attended was just how equitable are these proposed blockchain solutions. And I think because there's a lot of pressure from the industry to keep those concepts in mind, we're going to see some really cool advancements in the healthcare world as to how customers are going to be able to access and now have new opportunity for healthcare.
Excellent. Yeah, I've seen a few kind of projects coming out in the insurance space as well, of kind of collective insurance management to some extent, right? Instead of going through a central agency of insurance, a collective that has agreed upon a set of rules and how to make claims and things like that, that may really kind of put a wrench in the plans of traditional insurance as we're looking at it. So it's always interesting to see these pop up, and hopefully the audience sees that. I personally believe blockchain is going to touch all spaces. Whether you're a coder, a business person, supply chain, healthcare, there's a piece of this for everybody that it may touch in some aspect as it goes through. So in my course, we tried to go broad, and hopefully everybody finds something that they're really interested in. I want to go across that and then help students dive in to figure out what's there, because you never know where that job's going to come from. I know it's difficult right now to find blockchain jobs that aren't necessarily programmer jobs for a lot of people. But as you may see in your own careers, there's probably some kind of talk of blockchain in any of these companies, whether it's a year or two out or 5 years out. It's still coming down the road. So hopefully that everybody can kind of dive in and see what's there. But I want to do one final plug for the hackathon. It is in the spring. Hopefully all of you will sign up to participate. And those of you that have participated before, come back and be mentors and judges and kind of help us with that project as well. But I also want to point out that Ryan wrote a blog article back in the spring on the hackathon itself, kind of skills to kind of help you get kickstarted in the hackathon. So I'm going to post that in the chat here in a second because it's a great article to kind of give you some ideas of prepping for that as you're going through. But I want to thank the panel again for kind of coming back and attending today. It's great to see everybody's faces again. Hopefully next year we can do this all face to face and we can really kind of have some good networking events as well. But if anybody is interested, connect with any of the panelists out on Umbrella, on LinkedIn. If you need to get a hold of somebody, you can reach out to me as well, and I'll try to connect you as best as I can. Or if you're wanting to just discuss further about either the content that's in our classes or in our programs or about the hackathon itself, reach out to me or Dr. Lassity or Dr. Conway or Catherine Gadbury. We're happy to all kind of speak about it. This is what we love to do. We want to sit and talk and hear the innovations. So some of you I want to reach back out to, Jacob and Rishi. Hopefully here in a couple of weeks I can try to reconnect and have a one-on-one conversation to hear a little bit more about the companies. But any kind of closing comments?
No, just thank you for organizing. And yeah, if anyone wants to connect or network or talk, I'd love to. And yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter. Those are the two best places.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. Like I said, there's Ryan posted his link to his blog post there in the chat. If you haven't been able to attend the other sessions, all of this is recorded. It'll be posted out on YouTube as soon as possible for these last few sessions. Since they're parallel, I think they have to edit them together. But if you're also interested in last year's conference, it is also still out there on the Walton College of Business playlist. So if you go to their YouTube page, you can see all of the speakers from last year as well, if you're interested in some of that. And if you know of anybody that you think we should get here to next year's conference, let us know. We're always looking for feedback to invite people. So thank you all, and thank you all for a great conference this year.
Yeah, thank you. Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Yes.